Hello, everyone. It's really lovely to be back with you all. And before I start, I want to thank you all for your prayers, your love, and your support over the last few weeks whilst I've been away in Blackpool. I think it's true to say that I would not have been able to do as much as I have without knowing that you were behind me and providing me with that support. So thank you. Today, I just wanted to, I suppose, think and reflect a little bit about some of the things that I've been doing whilst in the hospital at Blackpool, and very much about that sense of needing to keep going, even when you feel a bit despondent, even when you feel a bit tired, when you need to pick yourself up after a challenging encounter and move on to the next task that needs to be done. When you have to pick yourself up having had a quite long and an intense conversation with a member of staff or a patient, and know that you now then need to go and do something probably quite mundane, like sort out the drinks in the chapel, or perhaps go and have a coffee and a joke with a member of the portering staff. There are times, and I think that's not unique to what I've been doing in Blackpool, but for all of us, times when we just have to be determined. There are times when we have to just keep going. And I'm sure all of you will have experienced days in lockdown when you have just felt like, oh, I can't keep going. And that's hard. And we need to be honest about that. But we also need to recognise that we are called as Christians to keep going and to keep our eyes focused on God. The psalm that's been set for today, Wednesday, is some of Psalm 16, and I'm just going to read 2 verses from Psalm 16. It says, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In his might he also instructs my heart. I keep the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, and I shall not be moved. We've had some interesting debates on WhatsApp about the Psalms, and some of them are incredibly uncomfortable to read, talking as they do about battle and victory, and about those who do not follow God being condemned. But we have to remember the Psalms were written by people who were genuinely seeking to live out their faith in the best way that they could. And these are about things that have been written by human beings to God. And what we have to trust is that God hears those things and responds to them. So, as the psalmist says here, I bless the Lord who gives me counsel, who instructs my heart. And for me, this reminds me about the importance of us being disciplined about prayer, about keeping going with prayer, about keeping always the Lord before us, even when it's actually the last thing that I feel like doing, even when it feels really stupid to be praying, and when you feel you look stupid knowing that you are praying. And equally, that pressure that I felt very much in the hospital, that there were other things to get on with, other things to do. So it was so easy for prayer to be squeezed out by meetings, by dealing with emails, by seeing people. But I was constantly reminded that if I didn't start the day with prayer and end the day with prayer, things were not always as good as they might have been. Some of you will know that about 5 years ago, I very foolishly volunteered to run the London Marathon for the hospice where I worked to raise money. I say foolish because I am no runner. I have 2 legs that just do not know what it is to run. They're short, and I spent most of my time as a child falling over because I was knock-kneed and I'd often trip myself up. So I have no idea what possessed me one foolish morning to agree with the fundraising manager that I would run the London Marathon. But I did, and I thought, well, I've said I will, and so now I must. Now I'm going to be very honest and say it was not a pleasant sight, me practicing running for the marathon. I'm short, I'm fairly round, and in fact, my family, being the supportive, lovely people that they are, nicknamed me the running pink marshmallow, and even drew a cartoon for me that I could have on my running shirt. And here it is. The running pink marshmallow. So you can imagine that there were many times when I would have preferred anything other than to go out early in the morning and turn very pink, get very breathless and very sweaty. But I knew that if I didn't keep up my regime of running, I would never complete the London Marathon. I learnt from my training for the marathon that you have to keep training regardless of the weather, although I didn't really mind the rain because actually that made it cooler. But far more importantly, regardless of how I felt, regardless of the pressures of work, and regardless of how stupid and foolish I looked, I needed to put the miles in. I simply needed to keep going and to keep up with daily training. And prayer is a bit like that. We need to keep trying, even when it's the last thing we feel like doing, and even when we feel really stupid, and possibly even look ridiculous praying. I think so often we think we have to be experts in prayer, and we have to have exactly the right words and have the right form, otherwise our prayers don't count. But just as I learnt when I trained for the marathon, you don't need to be a runner. You just need to be willing to have a go. We don't need to use the right words. We don't need to follow the lectionary. We don't even need to follow the particular prayer set for today. They don't have to be eloquent. Because actually prayer is simply about God wanting us to spend time with Him. Prayer is about us being organised and disciplined, but ultimately God is just waiting. He's waiting and longing for us to stop, to set aside the pressures of the day and to come to Him. Not with any great words of wisdom, but just to sit and to be. Even when that feels ridiculous, even when we feel really unsure. We just need to be committed to keep trying to find that place and that space where we can just simply sit and be. To allow God to give us counsel, to allow God to move our hearts, and to relearn that He is with us always, always at our right hand. And if He's there, then anything and everything is possible. There are so many ways that we can pray. We don't have to use words. We can sit with a piece of music. We can sit in silence. Or we can sit with something creative. We can pray as we sew or knit. We can pray as we garden or mow the lawn. We can pray as we wash up. We can pray with a special object in our hands that reminds us of ourselves and our families. We can pray in whatever way works for us and in whatever way God calls us to pray. So I would like to just encourage you today and perhaps for the rest of this week to ignore the chiming of the clock and just perhaps to spend 5 minutes in a quietened place. If you want to, light a candle and simply be. Because when we do that, amazing things happen. Like the fact that amazingly, I ran the London Marathon. And here's my medal to prove it. So, switch off the YouTube. Go and find a quiet place to be. And let God minister to your heart. Amen.